There is a silent prison that holds millions of people captive, yet it has no walls, no bars, and no locked doors. It cannot be seen, but it can control an entire life. It whispers before every opportunity. It appears before every dream. It stands between the person you are today and the person you were always meant to become. That prison is fear. Fear has convinced countless people to settle for less than they deserve. It has persuaded brilliant minds to remain silent, compassionate hearts to stay hidden, and extraordinary talents to never step into the light. It disguises itself as caution, responsibility, or realism, but beneath those masks lies one simple mission: to keep you exactly where you are. It tells you that failure will define you, that rejection will destroy you, and that uncertainty is something to avoid at all costs. The tragedy is not that fear exists. The tragedy is that so many people believe everything it says. But what if fear has been lying to you all along? What if the strongest people you admire did not become fearless because life treated them gently, but because they refused to let fear make their decisions? What if courage is not a gift reserved for a fortunate few, but a choice available to anyone willing to confront the voice that says, "You can"? Imagine how different your life would become if every decision was guided by purpose instead of panic, conviction instead of doubt, and possibility instead of limitation. The truth is that fearlessness is not about never feeling afraid. It is about refusing to let fear become the author of your story. Every meaningful achievement in history was born in moments of uncertainty. Every great transformation began when someone chose to move forward, despite trembling hands and an uncertain future. The people who changed the world were not people without fear. They were people who discovered a secret that fear could never understand, that the human spirit becomes strongest the moment it decides that staying the same is more painful than stepping into the unknown. Today you are about to discover that secret. Not a trick, not empty motivation, and not a fantasy that promises an easy life, but a timeless truth that has the power to reshape the way you think, the way you act, and ultimately the way you live. Because the greatest victory you will ever achieve is not over another person. It is over the fear that has quietly been standing between you and the life you were born to create. Fear is one of the most misunderstood forces in human life. Many people believe they were born fearful, as if fear were stitched permanently into their identity. They look at confident individuals and assume those people arrived in the world with a special gift that they themselves never received. But if you watch a child closely, you will notice something remarkable. A child does not hesitate to try, to fall, to ask questions, or to dream beyond reason. They attempt to walk even after falling dozens of times. They speak without worrying about sounding foolish. They imagine impossible worlds because they have not yet been taught the limits that adults carry. This reveals an important truth. Fear is rarely our first language. It is something we gradually learn through experience, criticism, disappointment, and repeated messages about what we should or should not become. From the earliest years of life, people begin collecting invisible lessons. Someone laughs when they make a mistake, and suddenly embarrassment becomes attached to trying. A teacher dismisses an idea, and the mind begins to believe that silence is safer than expression. A dream is called unrealistic, and ambition slowly shrinks to fit the expectations of others. These moments may appear small, but over time they form a powerful story inside the mind. Eventually, fear no longer needs an outside voice because it has learned to speak from within. It becomes an inner narrator that predicts failure before effort, rejection before connection, and loss before possibility. The mind has an extraordinary ability to remember painful experiences. It does this to protect us from danger, but it often fails to distinguish between real threats and emotional discomfort. Being judged during a presentation is not the same as facing physical harm. Yet the body may respond with the same racing heart, tense muscles, and overwhelming urge to escape. The brain treats uncertainty as if it were danger, even when uncertainty is simply the beginning of growth. This protective system, while useful for survival, can become a prison when it is allowed to govern every important decision. Fear also grows through observation. Children watch parents who avoid risks, friends who settle for comfort, and communities that reward conformity over originality. Without realizing it, they inherit beliefs that were never truly their own. They begin measuring their worth through comparison and approval rather than purpose and character. Slowly, they stop asking what they genuinely want and start asking what will keep them accepted. Fear flourishes wherever authenticity is replaced by performance. Society often strengthens this conditioning. Success is celebrated while failure is mocked. Perfection is admired while vulnerability is mistaken for weakness. Social expectations quietly teach people to avoid mistakes instead of learning from them. As a result, many individuals spend years protecting an image rather than building a meaningful life. They choose familiar dissatisfaction over unfamiliar opportunity because fear convinces them that certainty, even when painful, is safer than change. Yet conditioning is not destiny. The beliefs you learned can also be questioned. The fears you inherited can be examined. Every limiting thought has an origin, and once you recognize where it came from, you begin to understand that it is not an unchangeable truth. A belief repeated for years may feel permanent, but repetition does not create reality. It only creates familiarity. The mind can learn new patterns just as it learned the old ones. Every time you challenge a fearful thought with action, you weaken its authority. Every time you choose growth over comfort, you rewrite the story that fear has been telling you. The same mind that learned to expect failure can learn to recognize possibility. The same heart that learned to hide can learn to stand openly in its own strength. Fear may have been taught through years of conditioning, but courage can be cultivated through conscious choices, one decision at a time, until the person you become is no longer defined by the fears you inherited, but by the values you choose to live. By one of the greatest myths people believe is that confidence must come before action. They wait until they feel completely ready before speaking their truth, starting a business, changing careers, ending unhealthy relationships, or chasing a dream that has lived quietly inside them for years. They imagine that one morning they will wake up fearless, certain, and prepared for every challenge ahead. But that day rarely arrives. Confidence is not a magical feeling that appears before you take the first step. It is something that is built because you take the first step. Courage always walks ahead, while confidence follows behind. Think about every meaningful skill you possess today. There was a time when you knew nothing about it. The first time you rode a bicycle, your balance was uncertain. The first time you spoke in front of others, your voice may have trembled. The first time you faced a difficult conversation, your heart probably beat faster than usual. You were not confident because you had no evidence that you could succeed. The evidence came later, after repeated attempts, mistakes, adjustments, and persistence. Confidence was never the starting point. It was the result of refusing to quit. Fear often demands guarantees before allowing movement. It asks, what if you fail? What if people reject you? What if you are not good enough? These questions can become so loud that they silence every dream before it has a chance to breathe. But life has never promised certainty. Every worthwhile journey begins with unanswered questions. Waiting for perfect certainty is simply another way of postponing the life you were meant to live. Those who accomplish extraordinary things are not people who possess all the answers. They are people who decide that unanswered questions will not stop them from moving forward. Courage is not the absence of fear. It is the decision that your purpose matters more than your fear. It is choosing to make the phone call even when your voice shakes. It is submitting your work even when you worry about criticism. It is standing for your values even when standing alone feels uncomfortable. Every courageous action sends a powerful message to your mind. I am stronger than the story fear has been telling me. With every act of bravery, no matter how small, your identity begins to change. You stop seeing yourself as someone who avoids challenges and begin seeing yourself as someone who faces them. The remarkable thing about courage is that it grows through repetition. One brave decision makes the next one slightly easier. Every obstacle you overcome becomes proof that you are capable of surviving discomfort. You begin collecting evidence of your own resilience instead of collecting excuses for staying where you are. The mind slowly replaces doubt with trust because it has witnessed your ability to endure, adapt, and rise again. Confidence is simply the memory of courage practiced consistently over time. Many people spend their lives waiting to feel different before they act. But transformation works in the opposite direction. You act first, and then your feelings begin to change. You show up before you feel prepared. You speak before you feel completely certain. You keep moving before you see the entire path. The action itself creates the emotional strength you were waiting for. This is why small daily acts of courage are so powerful. They reshape your beliefs more effectively than endless positive thinking because they provide real experiences instead of imagined possibilities. Every person you admire has experienced moments of fear, uncertainty, and self-doubt. The difference is not that they were born with extraordinary confidence. The difference is that they refused to let uncertainty become an excuse for inaction. They understood that courage is a choice available in every moment, while confidence is a reward earned through repeated choices. Every step taken despite fear becomes another brick in the foundation of an unshakable life. proving that the strongest version of yourself is not discovered by waiting until fear disappears, but by moving faithfully through it until courage becomes your natural way of living. One of the quietest forms of fear is the need for permission. Many people never realize how much of their life is shaped by waiting for someone else to approve their choices, validate their dreams, or confirm that they are worthy enough to begin. They hesitate before making decisions because they are more concerned with how others will react than with what their own heart is asking of them. This habit often begins early in life. As children, we naturally seek approval from parents, teachers, and authority figures because it helps us learn and grow. But as adults, many continue living as though every important decision still requires someone else's blessing. They become trapped in a cycle of asking, "Will they accept me?" instead of asking, "Is this true to who I am?" The desire for approval can be so subtle that it disguises itself as kindness, responsibility, or humility. A person may say they are simply being considerate, but deep inside they are terrified of disappointing others. They silence their opinions to avoid conflict. They abandon their ambitions to meet expectations. They choose careers they never wanted, remain in relationships that no longer nurture them, and hide parts of their personality because they fear being misunderstood. Slowly, they begin living a life that earns applause from others while feeling strangely empty within themselves. There is a heavy cost to constantly seeking validation. Every decision becomes exhausting because it depends on opinions that change from person to person. What one individual admires, another may criticize. If your identity is built upon the approval of others, then your peace becomes as unstable as their opinions. You celebrate when they praise you and question your worth when they do not. In this way, your emotional well-being is no longer under your control. You have unknowingly handed the keys to your confidence to people who are often struggling with their own fears and insecurities. The truth is that no one else can define your purpose. The people around you see only fragments of your story. They cannot hear the quiet dreams that keep you awake at night, or understand the calling that continues to return despite every attempt to ignore it. Their expectations are shaped by their own experiences, limitations, and beliefs. If you spend your life trying to satisfy every expectation placed upon you, you may succeed in pleasing everyone except yourself. A life built on approval eventually becomes a life disconnected from authenticity. Fearless people understand something that transforms everything. They realize that respect is more valuable than approval. Approval asks you to become what others want. Respect grows when you have the courage to become who you truly are. Not everyone will understand your choices, and that is perfectly natural. Every meaningful path appears unusual to those who have never walked it. Innovation has always been questioned. Great ideas have often been dismissed before they were celebrated. Every person who chooses authenticity over conformity accepts that criticism is not proof of failure. It is often evidence that they are thinking independently. This does not mean becoming arrogant or ignoring wise advice. There is great value in learning from people with experience and listening with humility. But there is a profound difference between receiving guidance and surrendering your identity. Wisdom helps you grow, while dependency on approval prevents growth altogether. You can appreciate the opinions of others without allowing those opinions to become the final authority over your life. Freedom begins the moment you stop measuring your worth by applause. You no longer need everyone to understand your vision before taking action. You no longer delay your dreams until they become acceptable to the crowd. Instead, you begin making decisions based on your values, your purpose, and the quiet conviction that truth does not require unanimous agreement. The courage to release the need for constant validation opens the door to a life of authenticity where every step forward is guided not by the fear of rejection, but by the certainty that your greatest responsibility is to live honestly, even when your path must be walked without permission from anyone else. Pain is often seen as the enemy of progress, something to avoid, suppress, or forget as quickly as possible. When life becomes difficult, the natural instinct is to ask why it happened and wish it had never occurred. Yet some of the strongest, wisest, and most resilient people are not those who escaped suffering, but those who learned how to transform it into strength. The difference is not found in the amount of pain they experienced, but in the meaning they chose to give it. Pain can either become the weight that keeps you on the ground or the fire that forges a stronger version of who you are. Every person carries invisible scars. Some were rejected by people they trusted. Others failed after giving everything they had. Some lost opportunities they believed would define their future, while others endured criticism that made them question their worth. These experiences leave emotional marks, but they do not have to become permanent definitions. The mistake many people make is believing that what happened to them determines what is possible for them. They begin introducing themselves through their wounds instead of their potential. They say, I can't because I failed, or I won't because I was hurt before. Without realizing it, they allow yesterday's pain to make tomorrow's decisions. Pain has a strange way of teaching lessons that comfort never could. Success often celebrates what you have accomplished, but failure reveals who you are becoming. When everything is going well, it is easy to believe in yourself. Character, however, is tested when life refuses to cooperate with your plans. It is in those difficult seasons that patience is strengthened, resilience is developed, and wisdom begins to replace illusion. Every challenge asks a quiet question. Will this experience make you bitter, or will it make you better? The answer is never determined by the event itself, but by your response to it. Rejection, for example, feels deeply personal. It convinces people that they are not good enough, smart enough, or worthy enough. Yet rejection often has little to do with your value and much to do with timing, circumstances, or another person's perspective. Many opportunities disappear, not because you lacked ability, but because life was redirecting you towards something greater. Looking back, countless people realized that the doors that closed protected them from paths that would never have fulfilled them. What once felt like defeat later revealed itself as preparation. Failure carries a similar lesson. Society teaches people to fear failure, as though making mistakes is evidence of weakness. In reality, failure is evidence that you were brave enough to try. Every accomplished individual has a history filled with setbacks, wrong decisions, disappointments, and moments of uncertainty. The difference is that they refused to let failure become their identity. Instead of asking, "Why did I fail?" they asked, "What can this teach me?" That single change in perspective transforms every obstacle into an opportunity for growth. There is remarkable power in choosing to use your pain instead of hiding from it. The compassion you offer others often comes from the hardships you survived. The wisdom you share is usually born from mistakes you once regretted. The strength that inspires others is rarely developed in moments of comfort. It is shaped during nights of uncertainty, seasons of waiting, and battles fought in silence. What once threatened to break you can eventually become the very thing that equips you to lift someone else. Fear loses much of its power when you realize that surviving hardship has already proven your resilience. The difficult moments you once believed would destroy you became chapters you lived through. You are stronger today because of challenges you never wanted, but somehow endured. Every scar carries evidence that healing is possible. Every disappointment contains a lesson waiting to be discovered. Every painful experience holds the potential to become a source of wisdom, courage, and purpose when you refuse to waste your suffering and instead allow it to shape a spirit that no setback can permanently defeat. Fearlessness is not a destination that you reach once and keep forever. It is not a permanent state of mind where fear disappears and never returns. Every new challenge, every unfamiliar opportunity, and every important decision will invite uncertainty back into your life. The difference is that a fearless person no longer waits for fear to vanish before taking action. Instead, they develop habits that make courage stronger than hesitation. Fear may still knock at the door, but it no longer has the authority to decide which direction life will take. Many people imagine that life changes through one extraordinary moment, but lasting transformation is built through ordinary choices repeated every single day. The decision to wake up with purpose instead of excuses. The decision to speak honestly even when silence feels safer. The decision to keep learning after making mistakes. The decision to take one more step when comfort invites you to stop. These actions may appear insignificant in isolation, but together they create a powerful identity. A fearless life is not built through dramatic victories alone. It is built through countless quiet moments where discipline triumphs over doubt. Your thoughts play a crucial role in shaping your daily experience. Whatever you repeatedly tell yourself gradually becomes the lens through which you see the world. If your inner voice constantly repeats that you are incapable, unlucky, or destined to fail, your actions will eventually reflect those beliefs. On the other hand, when you intentionally challenge limiting thoughts and replace them with truthful, empowering perspectives, your behavior begins to change. This is not about pretending that difficulties do not exist. It is about refusing to allow negative assumptions to become permanent conclusions. A disciplined mind protects itself from becoming a prisoner of destructive thinking. Living beyond fear also requires accepting that discomfort is a necessary companion of growth. Too many people mistake comfort for peace. when in reality comfort often becomes the greatest obstacle to personal transformation. Remaining where everything feels familiar may seem safe, but it can quietly steal years of unrealized potential. Every meaningful achievement demands a willingness to step beyond what is known. Growth asks you to embrace uncertainty, to face challenges that stretch your abilities, and to remain committed even when progress appears slow. Fearless people understand that temporary discomfort is a small price to pay for a life filled with purpose. Purpose itself becomes a powerful shield against fear. When your life is guided by a clear reason for moving forward, obstacles lose much of their ability to discourage you. Difficulties still arise, but they no longer feel meaningless. Every setback becomes part of a larger journey instead of a final verdict on your worth. People who know why they are walking can endure roads that others would abandon. Their focus remains fixed on the vision ahead rather than the fears surrounding them. Purpose gives direction to courage and meaning to perseverance. Another essential part of fearless living is consistency. Courage practiced once is inspiring, but courage practiced daily becomes character. Every promise you keep to yourself strengthens self-respect. Every responsibility you fulfill reinforces trust in your own abilities. Over time, you stop depending on temporary motivation because your habits begin carrying you forward. Discipline quietly accomplishes what inspiration alone never could. It creates stability during emotional storms and keeps you moving when enthusiasm fades. Life will continue presenting moments that test your resolve. There will be criticism, disappointment, uncertainty, and unexpected change. These experiences are unavoidable, but surrendering your future to them is not. Each new day offers another opportunity to choose faith over fear, action over hesitation, and purpose over comfort. The secret to becoming fearless is not hidden inside extraordinary circumstances or rare opportunities. It is revealed in the simple but powerful decision to rise every morning with the determination to let your values guide your choices instead of your fears, until courage becomes woven into every thought, every action, and every step you take toward the life you were created to live.